Hey, y'all. My name is Angela K. Durden, and my name that I write under for my fiction, got some dust up there I want to get rid of, um, is Durden Kell. DurdenKell. Kell being my maiden name, Durden being my married name. And so that's that. Okay. I want to talk to y'all today about uh, a series that I wrote. It's a trilogy, and it's called The Dance Floor Wars. This is book one. Book one is Dispatches from the Front. You can see the Durden Kill right there. Okay, there's Dispatches from the Front. There's Lucinda's People. And there is Collisions. Now, I'm going to give you the premise for this. Well, first, let me tell you how I came about writing this book, this series. Didn't know it was going to be a book, didn't know it was going to be a series, but it ended up being that. Well, I got divorced. Well, I left my husband and was going to get divorced and did. And a friend of mine said, Angela, you need to go out dancing. And I said, well, where does one go dancing in Atlanta? I didn't know. Uh, she said, I'll tell you where to go. And she introduced me to some places where social dancing was a big thing. Uh, you didn't have to have a date. You could just show up and you could even ask somebody to dance. You could go out by yourself and dance. You could dance. Other people could come up and ask you to dance, and you would dance. And the music was great and all this stuff. And so I was at various places, and it was all a really good crowd, really good crowd. But I was finding stuff out about human nature that I had never known before. I kind of sort of suspected maybe a few things. But when you go out dancing, the the per everybody's personalities are very clear on the dance floor. There is no iffiness about it. You can even fake trying to be a good person, and you can be a good dancer, but it comes out and it shows what you really like. So I'm coming back home after these nights going out dancing, and I'm sending friends emails about the stuff that I'm seeing, the things people are saying to me, men and women, and they're cracking up laughing. And they say, "My God, you need to write a book about this." And I went, "What? What?" I don't know how I would do it. How do you present something like this? And one day I woke up with an idea of how to present it. Let me read to you the approach that I had towards telling the story. Uh, it's not just telling the one story, it's telling the totality of the story. If you take a John Le Carre Cold War Tales, you know John Le Carre, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, Smiley's People, blah blah blah, Taylor of Panama. Roll them into a comedy set. Think The Man from Uncle. Think Agent 99 and Get Smart, and there was something else I forget. Anyway, those kinds of things. Add a dose of confessions of the heart, and you will have the Dance Floor War series. And this is book one. Let me read to you what book one is about. First of all, it's written by a man by the name of Gordon Wesley Asbury, which, by the way, Gordon is an uncle's name. Wesley was my father's name. Asbury is some family name back in the woods. Uh, And he is a reporter. Gordon Wesley Asbury is a reporter, and his beat is the dance floor wars. In dispatches from the front, Gordon, ordered by his newspaper to take a break from the reporting on that war, does his best to relax. Instead, he meets Lucinda and falls in love. Gordon reports on the primary place for this battle, the dance floor, where Lucinda is a favorite of most of the dancers who have enlisted. He and Lucinda pretend not to know each other, and Gordon interviews the people who interact with Lucinda. After each Saturday night, they have breakfast the following morning, where he tells her what he learned and asks for her firsthand knowledge on that situation. Along the way, he meets character after character. I'm not even going to get into that. Let me read to you the opening. Now, this book, and for writers, authors, you'll understand this, and I'm sure a lot of readers will too, but I'll just explain it. This one, Dispatches from the Front, is written first person. In other words, Gordon Wesley Asbury is the one writing this book. I didn't write it. Gordon did. It's his story. Everything he's telling you is what he knows firsthand. Okay? So here is his opening, because this is his book, Dispatches from the Front. Dear reader, the line between love and hate is thin. These 8 words completely describe all the relations between man and woman since Adam was introduced to Eve and they had their first dance in the middle of the Garden of Eden. Oh, what a dance it must have been. This is at last bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh, Adam said poetically to Eve when they were introduced. We can well imagine Eve batting her perfect eyelashes in that first come hither. We know what Adam was thinking. Hot damn, I'm getting laid. But the glow of that first love didn't last long. It never does, still. Adam and Eve's ended when he did something stupid to try to please his woman after she listened to a seductively lined snake intent on breaking up her happy home. Their perfect love story went to a cold, cold hell, and war was thence declared between the sexes. These are but a few of the dispatches from the current war, the dance floor. Yes, from the battlefield and the trenches of the dance floor, because it is there, and only there, battles are waged and decisively won or lost within 3.5 minutes, the length of one song. Yet the volunteers sign up for the next campaign and the next as they praise their conscription, for conscription it is, and gaily march off to war. Weapons of choice are flattery and feigned interest, sincerity and artifice, hiding and seeking, wine and song, and sometimes the promises of pleasure and maybe a little bit of pain, if you like it. Reasons for re-upping are as varied as there are conscripts. There has never been a truce in this war. There never will be, no matter what the experts say, no matter what the preachers preach, no matter what the people pray for. This writer must admit, as white flags are waved and injustice decried, an end to this war occasionally wavers on the horizon as an oasis shimmers in the desert heat, and hopes rise. But though women may march in the streets for peace from, as they call them, those sons of bitches, and demand an equality that can never exist, though men may cower and only talk big when their women are not around, though they seek through law and legislation to right the wrongs done to them, no man nor any woman has the power to change nature. It is impossible. To think otherwise is insanity, because thus God made them, the man, the woman, 2 separate species destined forever to duke it out and then make nice for a small while when they come together and bring forth the next generation of new combatants who think they have discovered something unknown to their boring old parents. Foolish little children. Their turn will come, and they will be on the front, furiously dancing, energetically smiling, privately worrying, wondering if they will find love, true love, not the love of their parents. Never the love of their parents. Please, God, never that. They pray fervently to the God of their choice. There is nothing new here. There are only the stories you've never heard. I have changed all names and have attempted to leave out as many identifying details as possible of both people and places. You may ask why, and I'll tell you. These details do not matter. This war correspondent, embedded 30 years at the front, is tired, and yes, jaded, and truth be told, shell-shocked. Lay back. It's all been done before, goes the line in a song completely summing up my reason for being. Yet damped down against the cold night of life and thought by me to be out, the fire in my soul rose with vigor, strength, and a warmth I had never known through one encounter with a human being so alive that in the midst of the dance floor wars, a long and bitter battle raging from there to here to eternity and back, I found hope and a reason to live. And thus, on such randomness as this hinges the fate of humankind. I claim no special knowledge. I have only a true writer's willingness to bear all in self, truthfully and clearly witness the vagaries of mankind, accept one's place in the process, and tell the story well. Make them laugh, make them cry, make them mad, make them sad, make them think, make them act. Gordon Wesley Asbury, journalist, reporting from the front of the dance floor wars in this, the 6,121st year of the eternal war between the sexes. And that is the opening to the novel and to the rest of this trilogy. I'm going to read the next chapter to you. It's not too long. Planning a campaign. Chapter 1. Remember, this is Gordon. This reporter met Lucinda at a coffee shop. Quite by accident, we ended up sharing a spot because the place was packed and the only seat available was at her table. I didn't want to take my coffee and go. I needed to be around people living ordinary lives. My paper had sent me on a week-long R&R because, as my editor told me in an email, I was getting too close to the action on the front and needed to take a break. I reluctantly agreed and therefore found myself in this coffee shop sitting with, of all things, one of the main combatants in this war, even if neither of us knew it at the time. Lucinda, reading a book, barely acknowledged my question by a shake of the head as I asked if the seat was taken. She kept reading. But I found myself drawn to her. There was something about her I couldn't put my finger on, and the reporter and me, always able to sniff out a story, said there had to be one here. I bided my time and finally found an opportunity to speak. I was right about her. She was fascinating. I couldn't help thinking of a movie featuring live and animated characters. I did not remember the name of the animated character, but she had Barbie doll proportions, blown into bombshell curves. Her famous line went something like, "I'm not bad, I'm only drawn that way." That described Lucinda, but not physically. Though tall and with legs that didn't quit, but even that wasn't what was fascinating. There are a multitude of gorgeous women on this planet, and Lucinda wasn't the most gorgeous at all. For the purposes of telling a story honestly, I must admit, there were other seats to be had at the coffee shop. But I was drawn to the one at her table as if it were the only one, as if it was as if a beacon of light pointed at the chair and a neon sign said, "Take this one, stupid." I couldn't explain it then, and I can't explain now. All I can tell you is this. I had to sit at her table, so I did. Eventually, we got to talking, and I found out she came there every day for one cup of coffee and a gentle read. I showed up the next day early and waited. There she came. She saw me and said hello like we were old friends from way back. I felt welcomed, stood, and hugged her. I never stood up and hugged anyone, but I stood up and hugged her. There wasn't one false note about her, yet she was mysterious. She was transparent, yet deep. She went to a table and I followed as if it were the thing to do. We had a wonderful visit and I felt alive in her presence. She occupied a large corner of my mind, unlike any other woman had done before or since. She was naturally engaging, witty, and funny as hell. I cannot remember a time when I had laughed so much at the human condition and felt so hopeful about it. But with her, I did. She was brutally honest about her life. Only every now and then did I catch a glimpse of bitterness. I thought this woman wouldn't mind me asking about the bitterness. So I asked. It was simple, she said. She believed if she did all that was asked of her by society, religion, family, and husband, she'd have her life turn out a certain way. But come to find out, they all had lied, and she, sometimes only briefly, felt like a goodly portion of her life had been wasted. She smiled. Here she was, out and about, quickly making up for lost time as she tried to figure it out. At this confession, she noticed my face and asked what my expression meant. As a trained reporter, intent on not inserting myself into a story, I had not thought any particular expression showed from me and asked her to describe what it is she thought she saw. I must admit to you here, I was appalled I was such an open book. She began. Gordon, she said, you seem sad, as if you have had no good thing in your life ever and no hope of any, as if you have seen the horrors of war over and over. Yet you must remain above it all so that you can report these things to the citizens back home with a clear-eyed view. It is as if you know you will never see peace in your lifetime. Are you okay, Gordon? I couldn't speak, but finally got myself together. I asked how she knew. How do I know what? She asked. How did she know I was a reporter embedded all these many years on the front of the dance floor wars? The expression on her face fills me with joy even to this day. Words cannot describe the gentleness of her eyes and the softening of the line of her lips as she laid her hand on mine and patted it. She said she did not know what I did, but it was obvious to her what I had been through. I asked, a touch of disbelief in my voice, how she could smile in the face of the lies from every facet of civilized society and still be kind to a stranger. Oh, she said, she seemed to have a high tolerance for pain, and besides, she had always planned for the worst, and it seemed her imaginings of what worst was weren't as bad as her reality, so it's all good. I think back on my time of knowing her and following her as she went out and about. I think of this woman who could draw different people toward her without even trying. And I thought of her ex-husband, the one she fondly called the son of a bitch. And I thought he was in over his head from the beginning and did what a lot of people do when they are in over their heads. They panic. The ex had no idea how to handle this woman who only wanted to be happy and surrounded by happiness. So simple were her desires, she seemed more complicated than any other. So sincere in her intentions toward him, he thought she was scheming him harm. The poor, deluded, shallow man. So he did what he thought best to protect himself. He kept her under his thumb. He insulted her. He frowned at her constantly. He never gave her a compliment that didn't involve a backhanded insult. And I thought of her long, lonely existence, for lonely it was and is. But that part of the story will come later. I'm getting ahead of myself. We met every day that week, and the stories she told me and the people she introduced me to, many of which you will read about in this book, have helped me to give this in-depth treatment on the dance floor wars. The days at the coffee shop passed quickly, and on what I thought would be my last day of R&R, she made an offer I couldn't refuse. Why don't you, seeing as how you are a reporter and all, follow me around as an observer when I go dancing? She thought it would be fun to get my impressions of what she saw and experienced. She also thought it would be a blast to hear what men and women said about her when she wasn't standing there. Wouldn't it be fun, she said, for me to know you and you to know me, and we both pretend we don't know each other, and you can go around asking about me and listening or finding out about others, and then we can meet at the coffee shop and you can tell me all about it. I asked if she wasn't worried about hearing negative stuff about herself. She said she didn't care, and I believed her because she was brutally honest about herself. Plus, she said, it would provide information she needed to tell if she was making the right conclusions about people she met. I laughed out loud, and she slapped my hand and asked what was funny. I told her I didn't think she was coming to too many wrong conclusions, if any. I thought she'd like the compliment to her abilities of deduction. The smile stayed on her face, but her eyes went dead. She simply said, well, yes, said a lot. Now it was my turn to pat her hand, and I did. Lucinda, I said gently, it must be very difficult to have such knowledge. She merely nodded as the smile left her face. To cheer her up, I said I'd call my editor and see if he thought it'd make a good story. Her eyes lit up. She said to let her know. And that is how I came to follow Lucinda and have these stories to tell. I intersperse emails throughout this book. To G.W. Asbury at twnewsdaily.com from T. Smith 3, subject DFW series. Gordon, editorial loves the opening. We're building what we think will be a kick-ass series around the subject. Marketing is reaching out to companies with a natural connection to the war and setting up special advertising sections that will bring buyers to their doors, brick and mortar and digital. So far, marketing says there's a lot of interest. A special ad deck is being prepared. We may need you to do a meet and greet with advertisers. Hope they don't have too many requests if you get my drift. T.S. And that is the opening of Dispatches from the Front, Durden Kell. Dance Floor Wars, Book 1. Now, Book 2. Lucinda's People, Durden Kell. So you've already met Lucinda in the opening of Book 1. I'm not going to tell you how any of this turns out. The journey is always the thing in a story. The journey is always the same. It has to be taken unaware of where you're going. And so I'm not going to tell you where you're going. So the Dance Floor Wars, Lucinda's People. Now, this is Book 2. Lucinda's People is told by an omniscient narrator. So authors and some readers understand the difference between a first person that Dispatches from the Front is told by one person. He must know everything that he's telling about. He can't read minds. But an omniscient narrator does know the difference in everything. It knows the truth, whether the character knows the truth or not. I love writing. I actually love writing from the omniscient narrator's point of view. At the same time, the omniscient narrator can't cover all ways of telling a story. And so the first person way of telling a story has a different emotional feel to it. Whereas the omniscient narrator can report accurately, but has no pony in the race. Let me get a sip of water real quick. Hang on. So Lucinda's People is told by an omniscient narrator reporting on the war between the sexes, and specifically Lucinda and those with whom she interacts. We learn more about Gordon Wesley Asbury's true love, Lucinda, she of the persistent man troubles. Lucinda meets Big Daddy, and they embark on a series of adventures pretending to be other people, until finally they meet the Big Bang in a love-fueled weekend, at the end of which Big Daddy has the big epiphany that will change his life. Tattoo Ingenue. Now remember, we're talking about taking John le Carré Cold War style of naming characters, of putting them in this spy world, but it's based on the war between the sexes. Tattoo Ingenue, a virgin covered in tattoos, puts on a Stop Panty Peeler Songs parade in downtown Atlanta that ends when a tangled love riot erupts. Snatchmaster, Cassandra, founder of Down, Victor, founder of Whack, and Eternal Sunshine of the Not So Spotless Mind, head of Mister, all go on Jerry Tributary's show with Tattoo Ingenue. The war between the sexes gets more entertaining with each page. Okay, so let's begin this. Chapter 1, Bang the Drum Slowly. These past few months, Mike was waking too early. His clock always showed he had another hour before his alarm would scream. He learned not to roll over and attempt to sleep again because he knew sleep would not come and his body would feel miserable. He rose this morning as well and quietly padded into the kitchen to start a pot of coffee. Walking quietly was not for fear of waking anyone, because no one was there. It had simply become his habit to move quietly and get from one place to another with an efficiency of movement, sparing his lowering energy reserves. Mike was not looking forward to the evening. There was a time when he enjoyed bartending, when the people and their stories still fascinated him, when he was still surprised by what they would do and say when the sexes mingled, when he thought of writing a book about those stories. But no more. Where had he put those notes? Did it matter? When had he stopped listening? When had he pulled the plug on caring? When had he lost hope in mankind's ability to bring peace between the sexes and in this long, long war? When he was younger, he had hope. An end to it was in sight. But now he barely smiled when uttering, "What do you have?" Not that the reason for his weariness made much of a difference to his clientele. He was their servant, they the master. One didn't care about a servant's feelings when one was actively engaged in seeking one's own fulfillment. As long as Mike said with a semblance of a smile and a strong voice, "What'll you have?" or "You're regular?" they were happy and tipped well most of the time. He paid his bills on the tips. God knew his hourly wage sucked. But that was the bartending game, and his bar was the hottest in town most nights. He had the DJ to thank for that. Without the music, the crowds wouldn't come. It would be just another quiet bar where men hung out to get away from women. But women like to dance, said DJ F-Bomb, and men liked women. So it followed he would always have a gig. "Play it and they will come. Pun intended, Mike," he'd say, laughing knowingly, pointing a finger at Mike and walking to his station. Whatever. It no longer mattered to Mike. When did it stop mattering? When did he lose hope? Pouring the cream in his coffee, he remembered. It was the night Lucinda came in without Gordon. God, could it be? Could it really be that he had been clinging to hope through the romance of these two people? Lucinda, dancing queen, whose whirling dervish dance moves never ceased to make him happy as he watched her, but who needed a man of her own to worship her, only her. The one woman the men craved and lusted after but couldn't handle on any level. The one who lit the room with the fire of her personality and joy in life. And Gordon. Hemingway, the staff all called him privately because he was a writer and a damn straight good one. The one man the women in the room all wanted but knew they could never control. The one whose cynical, jaded attitude began to change as Lucinda moved into his life. Yes, that was the night Mike's hope died. When Lucinda came in without Gordon and said she didn't know where he was, as the smile on her mouth did not reach her dead eyes, Mike knew they were over. This goddamn war was lasting too long, too long. Could he muster out? Could he do any other job in the world than this? He slugged his coffee, picked up the mail from yesterday, and paid his bills. Chapter 2. War is a harsh taskmaster. Lucinda bought a copy of Gordon's book 1 year after it was released. Dispatches from the Front was brilliant, and, knowing him to be an excellent writer, she was not surprised to have those days brought back so clearly. She laughed and cried her way through it. She went so far as to compose a letter telling him how much she enjoyed the book. It read too much like a fan letter. Oh, Gordon, I enjoyed your book so very much. You are such a good writer. Wow, I wish I could write like that. Lucinda ripped it in two and threw it in the trash can. No one watching her rip the paper could have guessed at her internal commotion. It was not a dramatic rip with angry mutterings and flinging of paper into the trash. One rip, two, drop, done. She was always the quietly internal drama queen, the one who made true the saying, still waters run deep, the one who, while the world went to hell, smiled as everyone turned to her for solace, the one everybody wanted in their corner but was unable to sacrifice themselves for, the one who heard confessions but never gave any. Never, that is, until she met Gordon. She dismissed the thought. Even after reading his book, Lucinda was not ready to accept that Gordon's leaving was all her fault, though it was, and she knew it. The night of his leaving was a regular night. Nothing in the wind or on the wire to indicate it would be a night of quietly dramatic endings. For 2 months he worked around her house, repairing this, fixing that, doing things she never asked him to do, but that he did because she was his woman. And that's what real men did for their women. Lucinda smiled and encouraged and admired, went nowhere, and did nothing but stay with him as he worked on weekdays. She was happy to do so. She enjoyed his company. Sunday and Monday he scraped and patched. She cooked and smiled. Tuesday and Wednesday he replaced and primed. She cooked and smiled. Thursday he painted and painted. She cooked and smiled. Friday he bent knee and proposed. She declined and cried. Lucinda knew the proposal was coming. Her gut had never been wrong, ever. It was the bane of her existence. Never wrong, Lucinda. Always right, Lucinda. She didn't know, though, that it was coming that particular evening. She was prepared for it, though, and her answer was no. Gordon's expression at the termination of their relationship was sad and unbelieving. Sure, she was sad about it too, but it was the right thing to do at the time. So he went from kneeling in front of her to sitting with a thud on the floor with legs crossed, to slowly rising and carefully pocketing the ring in its case, to walking out the door and driving away, to moving out of state, to writing that damn book. I have to dance, Gordon. The statement was simple in its clarity and intent. He understood immediately. He didn't like it, that was true. But he understood it. Gordon was ready for quiet. Lucinda had not had her fill of noise. Gordon needed to be away from the fight. Lucinda couldn't get enough of the battlefield. The dance floor war showed no sign of abating in her life. He was ready to muster out. It must have taken a huge amount of self-control for him to walk out without too much groveling or begging for her to change her mind. In fact, he didn't beg. He didn't grovel. He listened. She loved him. She still did. But it wasn't their time for that marriage thing, for that commitment, for that joining of two lives. About that, she was right. The months preceding the breakup had been sweet on the one hand, aggravating on the other. Lucinda did not like admitting to herself she desperately needed a man. Such sentiments, an open secret with all womankind, were politically incorrect to utter in public. She told Gordon these things, though. To help him better tell the story of the dance floor war, she was willing to make that sacrifice. Still, she said all she was doing those years before meeting Gordon was going out to dance. Not for her the looking for a husband, no sir. Yet at the same time, at evening's end, when she didn't meet that man who could fire her imagination and her body, she was disappointed. Not just for that moment in time, but for the heavy burden of the unknown stretching out before her life that often caused her to cry. The months with Gordon took that disappointment out of the equation. In that taking, though, disappeared the drama and emotional roller coaster she fed on. She didn't consciously recognize those things right away. Her gut knew it and screamed a bit at her. She ignored her gut until she couldn't ignore it any longer. And when pushed to give a definitive yes, she gave a definitive no. I think I'm going to read the next chapter too because this DJ is mentioned in the first chapter. Chapter 3, and the beat goes on and on and on. DJ F-Bomb got his name when he let fly with the internationally famous word that is verboten on all regular broadcast media. Not only had he let fly with it once, he managed to follow up 3 more times in a row when a caller asked for a song that was, in his informed opinion, terrible. He got into an argument with the caller. That wasn't the problem. Everybody knew that was his shtick. Call him and rile him. It was a game, and the ratings were through the roof. He was the DJ everybody loved to hate, but then his act became stale, and ratings began to fall. He moved from one market to another smaller market to another for several years in a row. The ratings followed the same pattern, rise meteorically, then plummet and level off. He had to figure out a way to get more attention and enhance his earning potential. One day, the opportunity was handed to him on a silver platter. A woman called in and requested a Barry Manilow song, not just any song. If she had requested something off his Paradise Cafe at 2 a.m. album, he would have said, "Take your pick, baby. Awesome jazz chops on this album with Sarah and the Velvet Fog. Sorry about that, darling. Though the rest of his popular stuff is shit." But she didn't request any of that. No, she had to request the commercially successful Copacabana. Popular songs were his stock in trade. And he loved the disco years as much as anybody else. All that free hot love to a driving beat. Damn. But his response to this woman was swift. DJ, I'm sorry, woman. Did I hear you say Copacabana? Caller, did you just call me woman? DJ, yeah. Are you not a woman? Caller, yes, I am. But you said woman very insultingly. DJ, oh, my bad, baby. Let me try again. Did I just hear you say Copacabana, heifer? Caller, heifer? What's a heifer? DJ, so we have established you have bad taste in music. Are you stupid too? Caller, did you just call me stupid? DJ, I did not. I asked you a question. I asked, are you stupid too? Or are you also hard of hearing? Caller, you son of a bitch. DJ, we beat that out, woman. Listener, she just called me the male offspring of a female dog. Ain't that special? Like I've never been called that before. So, woman. That is when she punched his ticket close to home several times by calling him a washed-up has-been wannabe who didn't have the talent to make it to the big leagues and was serving this market in flyover country he'd sworn he'd never set foot in. Thus provoked, he proceeded to say, "Fuck you, woman," 4 times in a row without punching the bleeping button before the producer got back from the bathroom and managed to pull the plug on the whole show. It wasn't all bad. The station had never received that many calls in its entire collective history, and their phones had a meltdown. At least they knew they had listeners. Look on the bright side, DJ F-Bomb said. Cheap market research. They should have thanked him. Email count went sky high, and DJ F-Bomb was now so named thanks to a very unhappy listener. He didn't play Copacabana that night, and in fact made that part of his act, hating on Barry Manilow. He smiled all the way to his next better-paying gig in a bigger, more urban, and thus more understanding market. He began playing in clubs, some of whom encouraged the use of his eponymous title in its entirety, others which discouraged it mightily. He didn't have a problem remembering which was which. 20-somethings, "Get laid, get fucked," he got them to chant. They felt so grown up. 30s and 40s, they didn't like to hear it until they got very drunk, at which time they got back in touch with their wild and woolly youth. But the next day they could be expected to tell their children not to say such filth. 50s and 60s, it bored them. Really? Been there, done that, got something else. 70s, they couldn't hear anything, so he often got away with cynical murders he mumbled just under their hearing range. DJ F-Bomb himself was tired of this act. He really didn't hate Barry Manilow's music that much, and in fact had started to play some of his songs even if they weren't requested. Anything to please the women who came to dance, right? Anything to keep the men tipping well as they got to touch the women, right? Hey, it was the business of war. You went where your marching orders told you to go. You did things you didn't like in war. You listened to the drums of the war beat on and on and on. You kept your boots slogging through the mud, whether you liked it or not, because that was what had to be done. At heart, DJ F-Bomb had been, was, would always be a good soldier, even if he never made captain. From his perch, DJ F-Bomb saluted another Saturday night to Mike at the bar. And that is the opening to Lucinda's People. Lucinda knows all these people. That's why it's called Lucinda's People. You know, like in the John Le Carre thing, there's Smiley's people. Smiley knows everybody, and everybody knows Smiley. And they all interact with him. Even if he's not in one of John Le Carre's books, Smiley is known, and you can feel his presence, and thus Lucinda's People. Now, the Dance Floor Wars, Book 3, Collisions. Remember we talked about Big Daddy in that Lucinda meets Big Daddy in this book, and that does not end well. But it ends. No, I'm gonna back up for a second. It's not that it doesn't end well. It ends properly, but not how anybody thought. So, Collisions, Durden Kell. Collisions is the third title in this series. Dispatches from the Front is first, and Lucinda's People is second. After Big Daddy's big epiphany, he sets his sights, which is at the end of Lucinda's People. He sets his sights on finding a wife. Daniel, a reporter, gets an unwelcome surprise from his wife and, reeling from that, goes to a convention to cover the business of business. There he meets his big epiphany, and his life is changed. Trini and his father-in-law leave their abusive wives behind in Mexico and come to America. Oh my God. This is great stuff. Trini witnesses the murder of the Reed. Now, the Reed is mentioned in books 1 and 2, and his murder is in one of them. And when his father-in-law finds out, he makes a phone call to his handler from years ago. Forenza, a reporter, after helping her boss with his online dating profile, rewrites her own and discovers it isn't helping one bit, and so Forenza is screwed. We also learn much more about Eternal Sunshine of the Not-So-Spotless Mind, which is in both books. Tattoo Ingenue's handler, that's Eternal Sunshine, is Tattoo Ingenue's handler. You know, the virgin girl covered in tattoos, and head of Mister. Now, Mister is one of the organizations, Men Involved and Sisters 2 in Engineering Reversals. Now, think down. Down is Women Are Chattel is WAC, WAC. Down is oh gosh, I forget. But anyway, these are all organizations, spy organizations, if you will, propaganda organizations and the Dance Floor Wars. That is the big part of the war between the sexes at this point in time. It's a lot of fun. Anyway, Mr. Men Involved and Sisters 2 in Engineering Reversals is a worldwide organization devoted to healing the wounds between the sexes. And so Eternal Sunshine of the Not-So-Spotless Mind, we come to find out what he is more. And I'm working on a fourth book. I don't know if I'm ever going to finish it, but it is Eternal Sunshine's case notes, and he tells stories that aren't anywhere else that bring out various things, and so we'll see if I ever get that done. Okay, collisions. It starts with Viva la Revolution. Trini married Fortissima because that was what one did when one knocked up a virgin, especially one who lived in the same village and who grew up with you and had the same teachers and whose daddy was El Alcalde, the mayor, who, when he requested a private audience, one did not turn down because to do so meant certain death or close to it. And when El Alcalde said, "You will marry my little princess and you will never cheat on her, or I will have you cut into small pieces and dropped out of a plane over the Bermuda Triangle, though I will pickle your huevos and penne and keep them in my vault," it simply naturally followed that an enthusiastic wedding would take place post haste. Predictably, Trini smiled at the wedding. He smiled at the feast. Nothing was too good for El Alcalde's little princess. He did such a good job of smiling, even Trini's own mama and papa believed he loved the girl, or soon would. As for the girl, Fortissima begged El Alcalde to please not make her marry Trini, as he wasn't very good. When El Alcalde inquired as to what Trini wasn't very good at, and she informed him, he heard her when they, did that. She was blushing. Her father smiled in relief that yes, indeed, his little princess had been a virgin, and he laughed. Fortissima thought El Alcalde was laughing at her pain and began a large wailing cry that brought Mama. El Alcalde was scared of no one on this earth except Mrs. El Alcalde, and by the time she finished beating him about the head with his own hat and screaming "Estupido," he was cowering in a corner and begging her forgiveness for such an ignorant lapse in the handling of their daughter. Nevertheless, the wedding proceeded. On this point, both Mama and Papa were in agreement. And so time passed and a boy was born, and it looked just like Grandpapa El Alcalde, so it followed the best Cuban cigars, the very expensive cohiba, were passed throughout the small village to mark such a promising start to a dynasty. And more time passed, and another baby arrived, naturally. Having learned the lessons at her mother's knee on how one managed one's man, by this time Fortissima was regularly wailing on Trini. Previously sworn enemies, though the nature of their détente was Fortissima, El Alcalde and Trini became fast friends as each understood the nature of their lives. One day, going after elusive wild game, also known as dinner, they wouldn't bring home, a dinner that they wouldn't bring home, and knowing another beating was in store for them, and sipping on homemade mezcal, El Alcalde let slip his deepest, darkest secret. "I want to go to America, my son," El Alcalde slurred, caressing his cheek with the cold steel barrel of his hunting rifle. Trini could not believe what he heard and said, "Pardoname?" Haunted eyes turned toward Trini. A small nod of the head confirmed he heard accurately, and it was then that Trini began to understand what many around the world already knew. A drunk man's words are a sober man's thoughts. A wobbly finger brought to El Alcalde's lips swore Trini to secrecy. And so more time passed. And another child was born to Fortissima. This one looked like Trini's mama, and for a while he was a proud papa. Game was scarce and husband beatings frequent in both houses, and since one did not speak of such things in his village, and he did not want to be accused of being without cojones, Trini went hunting with El Alcalde often. It was on one such hunting trip that whispered wishes gave birth to firm, highly secret plans, and 2 weeks later El Alcalde resigned without notice when he slipped over the American border with his son-in-law. There were a couple of scares when they thought capture was nigh, but praise be to the Virgin Mary, Border Patrol did not see them, and before another week was out, they were in a large metropolitan area, hired on to a construction crew consisting of undocumented workers, also known as illegal aliens, and one legal guy with a green card. There they smiled as they worked their asses off and burned their backs every day the sun rose. And on rainy days, if there was no indoor work, they tossed frantically during nightmares featuring their women back home. Upon waking, they gladly took the verbal abuse of their bosses because it was less than what they had been enduring. Mrs. L.L. Calday took over her husband's position and began to beat some discipline into the rank and file of his office. Jokes at the only bar in the village were that they understood now why he left. Cute as she was, nobody wanted to marry Fortissima. Fear ran deep that the unhesitating application of steel did not skip a generation, or else why would her husband have left too? While now ex-LL Calday and Trini had nightmares but smiled at work, there came a time when they realized their lives were lacking in diversion, or what the Americans called fun. Upon asking around, they were told about Hydrate, a salsa club. It wasn't long before they were regulars. Um, okay, next part is in this book, in Collisions, I interspersed uh, some things from Gordon Unplugged, which is a like a blog he has or something like that. Gordon Unplugged, Collisions Through History. Former embedded correspondent in the Dance Floor Wars and syndicated columnist, author of books Catfight, Why Women Espouse Sisterhood But Can't Get Along, and Dispatches from the Front. The mind is not a slave to anyone. Thus spake the greatest romantic poet and writer of the 19th century, Victor Hugo, author of Les Miserables and The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Works of such political and emotional depth and certitude of man's unchanging genetic condition that for the better part of 2 centuries the sale of his books and tickets to mounted plays have made many men rich. I do not doubt the accuracy of Hugo's statement. However, from this writer's standpoint, there is a lot of voluntary servitude by those who are fearful, thus allowing others to enslave their minds. And that voluntary servitude leaves willing enslavers in control of lives, not their own. Wearing my probing reporter hat, I ask myself why voluntary servitude exists in spirituality, politics, marriage, or anything that requires thinking and action. Therefore, what are the reasons? Discounting stupidity, since that is bone deep and cannot be changed, I've identified 5. Fact number 1. Making a conscious decision implies taking responsibility for your own life. Excuse me. Fact number 2. Acting on a conscious decision means family, friends, bosses, and others in the community will not like it that you change the steps to their dance. Fact number 3. Continuing to dance to another tune, march to another drummer, even transform the dance itself implies revolution. Fact number 4. In revolution, ideas collide in flesh, steel, and bone. Fact number 5. People don't like pain and will go to great lengths to avoid it, unless they like that sort of thing. That's a column for another day. Therefore, I was led to one conclusion. Believing all opportunities for those to be injurious, people avoid collisions. Personally, I have confidence in collisions as destroyers of inefficient systems and the placer of building blocks for better ones. I reference the biggest collision ever, the Big Bang. Pun absolutely intended for you romantics out there. Comments are always appreciated. Used with permission, excerpt from Gordon Wesley Asbury's popular blog, Gordon Unplugged. Now I'm going to introduce you to Big Daddy. Big Daddy spills the beans. Though Daniel reported on the doings of high finance and business trading on Wall Street and knew the personalities of the movers and the shakers, though Big Daddy was one of the biggest movers and shakers, though their lives had not much in common, they found that each was a man's man and needed nothing else in common to have a thoroughly satisfying conversation. After a third Maker's Mark and Coke, Daniel changed the subject from business to personal. Love life still exciting? Big Daddy set his drink on the bar, placed both palms flat, and hung his head. Well, I'll tell you. Daniel laughed. I think you just did. Nothing shaking? Oh, no. That'd be an incorrect assumption on your part, my dear friend. The ladies are still hot and heavy after Big Daddy. He raised his head and said, I'm getting ready to tell you something, a story. You better not tell a soul, not for publication. Got it? Daniel crossed his heart and, in a promise of strictly off the record, said he hoped to die if he should ever tell. Big Daddy stared at him, soberly, though not sober. He nodded acceptance of Daniel's promise. I met a woman. It was the way Big Daddy said it that kept Daniel from retorting quickly with some half-assed comment like, duh, Big Daddy met a woman, story of 10. Yeah, the way Big Daddy said, I met a woman, implied implication of the serious sort. Big Daddy getting married? No. Then Big Daddy engaged? Big Daddy pointed a finger at the bartender, then dropped it to both glasses. Bartender nodded. Big Daddy answered, nope. Okay. Big Daddy dated a woman more than once? Yes. The way Big Daddy held the S at the end, and the manner in which he closed his eyes on the S, and the way in which he dipped his chin toward his chest upon holding the S. Yes, all implied certain implication in ways Daniel could not work out. And though this story would never make it out of his fingertips to paper, nor out of his mouth as rumor or innuendo, Daniel made like a good reporter, got quiet, and let Big Daddy tell the story the way he needed to, sighs and all. Yep. I dated this woman more than once. Drinks arrived, bartender led them to their conversation, and Big Daddy continued. See, Dan, I was bored. I cannot begin to tell you how bored I was. Everywhere I went. A finger on the bar punctuated each word a second time. Everywhere I went, Daniel. You understand me? You understand me? Daniel nodded. Everything I did. Everything I did. Bored. So one night, me and some people went out, and everybody was there was, hey, Big Daddy this, and awesome Big Daddy that. Everybody except this one woman. Big Daddy smiled at the memory. She never acknowledged my existence, sat there twirling the stem of her wine glass between her fingers and staring at the ceiling. You wouldn't know all that passion and energy was waiting to burst out, but oh my God, when she danced, God, she could dance. Man, she could dance. You mean like on a pole? No, watch your mouth. I mean, like, a DJ plays a song, a man takes her hand, they go dance. Oh, normal dancing then. Yes, normal. Actually, it's called social dancing or partner dancing. Remember those terms. Anyway, there was something about her that intrigued me, so I finally walked over to her. Wait, stop. Daniel held up hand like a cop. Whoa. You're telling me that you walked over to a woman? I know, right? Anyway, then she got me so flustered, Daniel did the cop whoa hand again. Flustered? Did you say you got flustered? Yeah, me. Big fucking daddy. Flustered. God damn it, Daniel. I blushed. At that confession, Daniel laughed, almost spilling his drink, and asked because he knew there was more. What else? And I choked on my drink. Big Daddy chuckled at the memory. And she wouldn't take my card. What? No. Swear to God. She gave me her card and said for me to call her. But you've never called a woman. Big Daddy slapped the bar. I know that. Did you dance with her? Oh, hell yeah. Yes. I danced with her. There were those S's held out again, implying more implication of the manly appreciation of woman sort. And then what? Daniel waited. And then I choked. Big Daddy slugged his drink. You choked on your drink again? Big Daddy shook his head and swallowed. He set his glass down slowly and turned it this way and that, making wet rings on a napkin. No, I didn't choke on a drink. I mean, I choked. I got scared. I didn't call her. But I thought about her every day for over 7 months. Big Daddy sat back on the bar and crossed his arms. He turned his head to Daniel and said, I ain't never been scared of nothing in my life. Women, easy. They came, they went. I didn't have to work for none of it. Success after success after success. I mean, look, you know the story. Daniel nodded silently. For the first time in my life, I found out that, well, I found out, had it confirmed, that my success with women wasn't due to my amusing and brilliant personality. It was due to my money. Now, Daniel, I knew that little fact on an intellectual level. He sighed. I always thought, always knew I'd be successful with every woman, and that the money was an added bonus on top of my supremely confident manner. So upon meeting Lucinda? Yeah, Lucinda. Upon meeting her, and nothing I did worked with her, honest to God. Dan, honest to God. Everything I said got turned around on me. Daniel shook his head. I don't understand what you're talking about. Okay. First thing I did was hold out my hand for her to shake. She shook. I said, hello, my name is Big Daddy. What's your name? Okay, sounds good so far. Right, Dan, it does. She laughed like she was amused and said, Big Daddy? When did you get the name Big Daddy? Only she didn't say it like Big Daddy. Oh, no, no. She said it sort of popping the sounds like this. Big Daddy. Daniel repeated. Big Daddy. Kind of cat on a hot tin roof accent going on there. Nice. Okay, so what'd you say? I didn't say anything. So she says, was it your coach? Was it your girlfriend? Was it your mama? I don't see the problem, James. You don't see the problem. The problem is I didn't know what to say. You mean you were without words? Yes. James, every man goes through this. I mean, that's part of, you know, dealing with women. Daniel, you got to understand this never happened to me before. And that was when I found out how much of a coward I was. Daniel laughed. James, we men are all cowards. Are you kidding me? No, I'm not kidding you. It took me over 7 months to get my courage up to talk to her again. Big Daddy stopped talking, turned to the bar, shoulders hunched, leaned down to his drink, and sucked up an ice cube. Daniel caught the eye of the bartender. Kitchen still open, he asked. Yes, sir. What do you want? Bring us some wings, double order, hot sauce. Yes, sir. It'll be about 15 minutes. We'll be here. Daniel slapped Big Daddy on the back once in a friendly fashion to give him the strength to keep telling his story. Big Daddy sat up straight and continued. We went on a few adventures. One time we pretended to be other people and dressed up like a preacher and his sister from deep in the Appalachians or Oklahoma or somewhere like that. And another time we pretended to be an aging rock star and his assistant. And then we went dancing at this Cajun Zydeco place. We only had sex once. Well, that's not true. We did it 5 times, but all in one weekend. 5 times. One weekend. Yep. And it wasn't just sex either. It was making love. There's a difference, you know. James nodded his head as if he must convince Daniel such a thing existed. Daniel nodded that he understood, and then I've never seen her again. How long has it been? James, swirling melting ice. James swirled melting ice. I'll be all right. 8 months. Why? Sounds great. Exactly what you need. She is 20 years ago. Big Daddy closed his eyes and rolled his head 360 degrees around his shoulders and slowly shrugged to release his tension. It's all my fault. That weekend we made love. We even had a rip-roaring argument. The makeup sex was great. I've heard of makeup sex. You've never had makeup sex? No. So lots and lots of firsts with Lucinda. Lots and lots of firsts. Daniel waited as Big Daddy thought. Big Daddy continued. So what happened was that the weekend was so great. I mean, it was great. And for the first time, I got to see what I've missed out on, what a real relationship could be and all that it implied. And I was thinking that this was going to be a great life with Lucinda. Then just as I allowed myself to picture that life with her, here came the epiphany. The epiphany? Yes, the epiphany. I realized I wanted children. Me. I wanted to be told to take out the trash. I wanted to wipe snotty noses and rock a crying, colicky baby to sleep. I wanted to be a husband and father. She didn't want children? She has kids. They're all grown up. She's not doing that again. Daniel's surprise showed. Oh, she's older than you. Yeah, Big Daddy smiled. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, what did I see in that older woman? Well, how old was she? Looked early 40s, but she's early 50s. Oh, my age then, totally ancient. Delivered with a sarcastic chuckle that would usually make his friend laugh. This time Daniel's joke fell flat. Really? Anyway, Big Daddy sipped his drink, his smile gentling into wistfulness. So now that I've been looking for that woman who is ready, now I've been looking for that woman who's ready for the now and future me. Any luck? Big Daddy laughed quietly. No. However, I can tell you a side benefit of this whole process. Yeah? Yeah. Now that I'm very, very clear about what I do want, I'm also very, very clear about what I don't. Big Daddy ain't been on any mo dates, and I thought, why not, right? So I even joined one of those online matching services for high net worth people. What the hell? Aren't you afraid of your info getting out there? Your reputation? To hell with my reputation. And yes, I put out there that I wanted some very specific things. And if you, woman pursuing my profile, are looking for somebody you think is going to be impressed with your boobs or your ass or your so-called talented pussy, then please know I've seen them all and experienced everything those things have to offer, and I'm bored with it. Not that I never want them again, mind you, but damn it, I need a real woman who's ready to live a real life. You said all that on your profile? Yes, I did. Straight out like that, too. And Jane slapped the bar. So far, nothing. But at least it is high quality nothing, and that is fine with me. Daniel knew exactly what James meant. And here came their wings. So, this is a trilogy. I don't know that I can hold them all three up. Maybe I can. Oh, yeah, I can if I do this. Can you see them? Yeah. It is a trilogy very much worth reading. And remember, if I had not gone out dancing and seen everything that I saw, and there's a lot of stuff in this book that was said to me, and is how I came to see that, a drunk man's words is a sober man's thoughts. Y'all should get it. You should read it. It's all on Amazon, all of it. It'll be entertaining. It is not politically correct. It is fun. It is fun. So listen, let's see. What kind of music can I close this out with? I don't want to do the helicopter. I know. What about a fire truck? Rush into an emergency in the dance floor wars. Oh, well. Well, I'll tell you what, folks. That's going to end it for this recording. Those who've written books understand. They understand that you write a book, you're tired of the characters. You're tired of them. And once the book is done, great, you're ready to move on to the next. You're ready to move on to the next book. Even if it's the same character, you're going to put them in a different situation. And you just don't look at the book again. I mean, that's just most authors, they're moving on. And I had forgotten just how much fun this series was. And you're going to go on a journey like you would not believe. And it's just too fun. It's too fun. So get the books, you guys. In the show notes, I'll put the I'll put the links for each of the books in order: book 1, book 2, book 3. And y'all enjoy them. I promise you'll enjoy them. All of them. And I'm working on the 4th one. Well, I'm going to say goodbye. Bye. This is Angela K. Durden, or Durden Kell. Durden Kell as my fictional, my name for all my fiction. Okay, bye, y'all.